Good morning, everyone. Esteemed guests, on behalf of our team, welcome to Reluxury event, the first global e-commerce event addressing the future of luxury and fashion through circular economy. My name is Stéphanie Bretonnière, and I'm the CEO of Power3.io, a Web3 impact studio aiming to unlock sustainable growth, unleashing brand hidden assets, business disruption, circularity, community, Web3, and innovation. I'm very pleased to be the master of ceremony of the Reluxury talks for the next 4 days. It is an honor and great pleasure to be with you today in Geneva, but also to be with all our attendees from all over the world through the live stream conference. The aim of this first edition event is to address the urgent need for action. The irreversible impacts of human activities on the environment are increasingly clear. It is getting harder and harder to ignore the fact that the climate crisis, biodiversity loss, and the pollution of our planet are endangering our foundations of life. With its 3 hot topics, circular economy, digitalization, and climate protection, Reluxury Events is touching on 3 key levers for tackling the 3 global challenges. The only way to successfully take on this global situation is through a comprehensive transformation towards a climate-neutral, resource-efficient, and circular economy. Luxury and fashion brands, known to be trendsetters, have to lead by example. Circular economy is a must-have, not only for the planet, but also for a sustainable business growth. Driven by millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, consumers, the global pre-owned luxury market grew by 65% since 2017, reaching 33 billion euros in 2021, according to Bain & Company recent report. But it is expected to reach 51.7 billion euros in 2026, predicting an annual growth rate of 10 to 15% over the next decade. The talk of the day will address many critical topics about climate change, sustainability transformation, circularity in fashion and luxury industries, but also emphasize best practices, use cases, tips, and advice. We will also unveil amazing disruptive startups, innovations, but also emphasize the need for building community, strengthening your e-commerce, finalizing your Web 2 transformation, and starting to leverage Web3 technologies, while finally understanding the impact of cultural habits and regulation. To end this first amazing day, we will welcome here tonight on stage an amazing woman, Rebecca Capelli. Rebecca is the film director of Slay, a documentary going behind the scene of fashion, investigating fur, leather, wool greenwashing, and the impact on brands using animal skins on people, planet, and biodiversity. But to start the day, let me please invite on stage to talk about sustainability, the road to 2030, Céline DASSONVILLE, who will moderate the next panel. Céline is the CEO of Ethiwork and co-founder of the French Federation of Circular Fashion. And also,
thank you.
I invite you on stage Irene Martinetti, Circular Economy Manager at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And please, Irene, welcome. And last but not least, from Portugal, Arthur AUBOEUF, co-founder for Time of the Planet. The floor is yours.
Good morning to everyone. Can you hear me well? Great. Thank you very much for being with us. We have really tough competition from the exhibitions. That is awesome. And I really appreciate the fact that you take time to listen to experts to nourish your knowledge. My name is Céline DASSONVILLE. Had many lives. I reinvented myself. I repurposed myself. I think I'm an upcycled product, but I've been working in communication and I've been CSR director for one of the most prestigious jewelry brands. This job led me to have a really deep interest in the potential of luxury to lead the change, to shape a tomorrow that can be sustainable. For me, it's an honor and a privilege, but as well a responsibility to start with the first panel to moderate Reluxury events. I'm here because I've got personal convictions that it is time to act. And each of us sitting here on the chair has got a role to play as a citizen, as a part of the organizations, and we can make things so that luxury is getting more sustainable and lead the way in terms of innovations. I'm convinced as well that luxury goods have some really true assets to leverage. Luxury goods have been crafted to last and to be passed through generation and generations. And it is now time that this sustainability by design in the product go further so that it's become sustainable in the whole supply chain. We're going to talk about many topics, and you're going to see me under different hats. But we're going to talk about rethinking the business. We're going to talk about repairing the luxury good. We're going to reinvent the way luxury can lead the way. And we're going to redefine together the future of luxury. That's many I don't know if you are familiar with the luxury, but it is part of the circular economy. When we talk about circular economy, we talk about the 5 R or the 3 Rs, which are the reinventions we go through to move from linear business to circular business. The reason why we're going to talk about that with Irene, that is sitting close to me, it's that maybe one of the most exciting things when we look at sustainability is the potential of circularity to change our business and to make them long-lasting. And on that, luxury has many things to share with us and to push further. So what we're going to do in this first introduction panel is that we're going to step back from the specificity of the luxury business, and we're going to look at the world from a bigger angle. We've got 2 guests that we have the pleasure to have with us, and I would like to thank them because they've been working night and days, and as it's the first edition of Reluxury events, they had to work hard, and they are there to share their experience. Their experience is not directly linked to luxury, but it's linked to the transformation of economy that can lead to better footprints, whether it's environmental footprints, social footprints, cultural footprints, and they are there as well because they have created new business models and new things that are very exciting. I'm thinking about Time for the Planet, and you're going to listen to Arthur. I spent some time with him. I couldn't stop asking questions to him. What he's been creating is just so amazing in terms of innovation in the business, innovations that are developed to serve the purpose of luxury company, and innovations in terms of through new ratio that can shape the new business that we are evolving in. I'm not going to take the floor for me, but I'm going to let the expert talk. So the first thing that I would like you to do, Irene, is to present yourself and to explain who you are and who you represent as an institution.
Thank you, Céline. And hello, everybody. I'm really delighted to be here today, and thank you for the invitation. It's an exciting event, especially for a circular economy enthusiast, with the RE in front of everything, which is a core part of a circular economy. My name is Irene Martinetti. I work at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and I'm part of the Circular Products and Materials team, and I'm leading our work on indicators. We've developed, and we'll talk about it perhaps a bit later, the circular transition indicators that companies can use to measure their performance and understand how they can improve their circularity over time. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development, also known as WBCSD, it's a global CEO-led organization of over 200 leading businesses that are working together to accelerate those system-wide transformations that we need to achieve a net zero, a nature-positive and an equitable future by 2050, which is our timeline and already goes beyond the timeline for today. But of course, it's informed by all those commitments that we'll discuss today.
Thank you, Irene. Arthur, could I invite you to present yourself and to explain what Time for the Planet is about?
Yeah, with pleasure. Thank you very much for having me today. I hope the connection is okay. So I'm Arthur. I'm coming from a little town close to Geneva in the French mountain near Oyonnax, for the people who knows this place. And I started 10 years ago creating some communities on the social networks. My communities have grown big because a couple of years after, we had like around 10 million followers on the social networks. So I created some medias with these communities, smartphone apps, a website, and I sold this company to a dating platform a couple of years ago. After that, I run the Europe for a social network named Triller, who's a competitor of TikTok. And it was a crazy adventure because we started free, and 2 years after, we raised 300 million euro, and we were 400 people. But there were no real purpose for me in this adventure because my only goal was to let kids dance on the smartphone app, and I would like to do something more fulfillness. So that's why I started to interest myself about the transition, the ecological and the climate crisis. So I'm not an expert of the climate at the beginning, and today I'm the co-founder of Time for the Planet. What we are doing is we are using entrepreneurial skills to deploy innovations that are really powerful and can help reshape our economy, reshape our industry, to decarbonize it at a global scale. So Time for the Planet has a mission: deploy 100 innovations that can change the game globally, thanks to entrepreneurs and innovators, but maybe we will talk a bit in details after. The idea is really to find these innovations all around the world, and that's why we are many people into Time for the Planet as shareholders, because what we are doing is first being a movement of shareholders that can find these innovations, finance these innovations, and hire entrepreneurs to deploy these innovations.
So Time for the Planet is a completely new business, and we will have the chance to look at its specificity, how it's work, what it has been creating, and what could Luxury Group could use from the innovation that is developed from Time to the Planet. But today it's about optimism. It's about looking at how we can take our responsibility and use luxury as an iconic way to pave the way to a more responsible business practices. But prior to do that, it's important as well to have maybe to remind a little bit why it is important to embrace the circular economy, what are the current challenges, and why do we need to change our businesses nowadays. So Irene, could you give us a bit of overview of why it is important to act now if we want to have a sustainable world and if we want to meet the sustainable development goal set by the UN by 2030 or 2050, depending on the KPI we're looking at?
Of course. Thank you for this question. It was time to act perhaps yesterday already, but it becomes urgent and urgent by the day, and we live today, and it's no better time to start acting if we haven't done it yet. This is because Stephanie also outlined this in her opening. We are facing global challenges collectively that are extremely urgent. We know that next week there will be the Conference of the Parties, the 27th in Sharm el-Sheikh, discussing the climate urgency challenge. We are far behind on reducing emissions, and therefore that is becoming visible to all of us beyond what is happening perhaps in the Maldives and in those countries that are experiencing the more violent impact of the rise of temperatures. We are also seeing it here today with the unseasonal weather, which we've recently experienced. But also in terms of biodiversity, more and more the urgency comes from the fact that very soon we'll not be able to access all the resources that we've been using today. Biodiversity loss is impacted up to 90% by the way we are now extracting resources. We mostly primarily take and make and waste resources in a linear model. That means that about 99% of everything that we buy today ends up as waste in 6 months. We can do better. We must do better. We also experience with, at the moment, the war in Ukraine and also during the pandemic, supply chain disruptions. Many materials which are critical also to the luxury sector are becoming scarce and experiencing price volatility. So this urgency is hitting business very hard, and it's time to move from these very resource inefficient type of functioning, which is the linear economy, take, make, waste, to a circular economy, which allows for a highly resource efficient approach to resource use. That is an impact that we foresee can have on net zero, for example, of up to 50%. If we completely change the way we use our products and materials, we can halt biodiversity loss by 2035 by just acting on some circular economy actions on 4 major sectors, and fashion and textile is one of these key sectors. And so there's certainly a lot of opportunities that we can leverage on the climate urgency, on the biodiversity loss urgency, but also in terms of sustaining our businesses long term, that the circular economy can deliver and that we should take seriously.
And on that, maybe you think that luxury sector doesn't have a strong footprint because it's not fast fashion. But in fact, when we think about luxury good, some of the raw materials that are used, such as gold, precious stones, such as very agricultural crops that are required to make cottons or to make wools, have got an impact on biodiversity. Luxury have always been inspired by nature and have always been using scarce resources. So in fact, from a symbolic standpoint, the subject of maybe crafting out of waste or using recycled material is very important for the luxury sectors if we want to reduce what we call the scope 3 impact. That's the impact whether it's climate impact, environmental impact, that is within the supply chain of luxury goods. And the great news is that many brands that are here today are embracing circularity. For example, Chloé and Kering are crafting new glasses that are made of recycled acetates. You've got many watch brands, whether they are new challenger, that are using recycled steel that is decarbonized. Many brands are embracing recycled goods. So we are seeing that the circular economy is very strong within the luxury business, and it's a natural playground with vintage goods. On that, what I think is very important is to maybe explain how you can manage and measure circularity, how luxury brands can learn from what is done at the global level to better manage their businesses and reduce the negative footprints they might have on the environment.
Thank you for the question. The way we look at circularity is through essentially three main pillars, which are sourcing, and Céline just talked about it. Especially when it comes to the sector, sourcing is the biggest footprint in terms of the materials that we use, and therefore a company might choose to look at alternative options rather than virgin extracted materials to deliver their products. Another important element that we look at is perhaps shifting from a technical material to a biological material. And in this case, these would be sustainably grown bio-based materials that we can use, for example, to deliver some of the goods, like instead of leather, for example, and a few other products that can benefit from shifting from a technical to a biological material. That is in the case of sourcing, and it's an important indicator that is now also included in the EU taxonomy and the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive at the European Commission level. There is also another type of aspect that we want to look at, and that is the product when it's made. And this really is two pillars that we need to consider. One is design. Are we designing our products so that they can last very long? And of course, this sector already does that. And then do we design our products so that at the end of life, they can be recovered? That means that if, for example, we are developing a beautiful sweater from sustainably grown yarn, that sweater needs to be designed in a way that there's no toxicity in it, so that by the end of its life, it can biodegrade safely. That brings me to the third pillar, which is the end of life of a product. As much as we're developing this responsibility in our businesses, it's also important to understand what happens to our products at the end of life. And this is also part of the shift from linear to circular, where we start understanding what can we do to impact that end of life. And in this case, of course, business models are key. And this conference in particular looks at how can we make sure that these products that we designed for such a long life are actually used and reused in several cycles, recovered until, if we're talking about this beautiful sweater made of sustainable yarn, it ends up almost all broken and destroyed on a landfill where it can biodegrade safely. So these are the three key pillars when we think about material use and our responsibility as business to make sure that across the value chain we source responsibly and with secondary materials or renewable, sustainably bio-based grown materials, and that we design our products so that they can live long, that they can be recovered, disassembled, if we're thinking about a computer mouse, for example, and then that by the end of their life, they are recovered fully. Of course, this is one part of the picture. A circular economy also looks at water, and water use needs to be circular and efficient. More and more will be needing to be saving water and reuse it in several cycles. And also looking at the renewable energy. We want a circular economy to be powered as much as possible by renewable energy so that Also, some of the rebound effects that we might experience in terms of overconsumption, for example, are at least mitigated by the fact that transport of the goods that we are selling and reselling all the time is fueled in a way that is through renewable energy, for example. So these are some of the core indicators that we look at. Of course, there's a lot more. Critical materials is an important one that the sector certainly needs to consider. And by taking action across these items, then we have a chance to lower our environmental footprint, both from a climate urgency perspective, but also in terms of restoring nature.
And I invite you to look at the different talks during the conference, because we will see concrete example of businesses that are shifting from ownership to enable maybe luxury customers to rather rent the product than owning the product, whether it's in fashion or whether it's in jewelry or watchmaking. We're going to see concrete example as well of brands that are fully circular. For example, ID Genève Watch is a brand that is circular based in all the product that they're using in the watchmaking sectors. And most of the major luxury brands, whether they are in fashion or in hard luxury, have got initiative at all stages of the KPI that you just mentioned. They are decarbonizing their value chain, they are crafting out of waste, they are making waste sexy, and they are selling waste even more expensive than the raw materials, because it's corresponding to a desire from the consumer. And we will see that this afternoon with Deloitte. There are more and more customers from the luxury sectors that have got appetencies for new materials. So, Arthur, you must feel a bit alone in Lisbon. So it's going to be time for you to explain us how we can not only adjust existing business model to embrace circularity, but completely innovate in terms of businesses to be dedicated to drive innovations that serve sustainability purpose, and to innovate in terms of KPI to shape the business of tomorrow, so that it's just not profit-led, but it's also led through sustainability and climate dividends. I don't know. Up to you. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Really hard to explain all of this in English, but I do my best, and I hope it's going to be okay. But on our side, for the short story, we had this conviction that companies could be the perfect tool to help do the transition and change the game globally regarding the climate crisis, because companies, by definition, are changing the way we are living globally. And that's exactly the point when we are talking about this transition. So with Time for the Planet, the first thing we have done is to meet with some scientists, and we had the luck to meet with some people like Jean Jouzel, who's the ex-vice president of the IPCC, for example, and other kind of scientists from all around the world. And what they told us each time is that to do this transition, we need two things, and we know that these two things can change really the game. The first one is sufficiency, and we start to talk about it more and more, and that's a good point. And the second one is innovation, but not innovation just to have like techno-solutionism things, but innovations to do differently. And we know it's possible to do differently because the innovations we need right now to change things already exist. It's not a problem to create these innovations because every innovation we need right now exists. The thing is that these innovations don't scale. And the reason why they don't scale is that because innovations and innovators are not entrepreneurs. They are like scientists, they are like searchers, they are like engineers, but they don't know how to find the right business model, how to transform their innovation into an enterprise, a company, how to scale, how to go to the market. And that's how Time for the Planet started on our side, because it feels like strange, because we know so many crazy good entrepreneurs that are doing exactly this and want to take part of something more meaningful right now and help this transition happen. So that's why we are doing this with Time for the Planet. We are like doing the climate Tinder, because we are matching innovators with entrepreneurs. And we have to go beyond this, because what we see is that by design today, many companies are not sustainable because shareholders are driving the companies regarding some indicators that could be dangerous. Like, for example, if it's only the profit, it's starting to be dangerous when you have to choose between, like, I don't know, rejecting some toxic product into the rivers and earning a bit more money when you're a shareholder. And that's really what happened at the end. So what we have done with Time for the Planet is to create an indicator that is only about environmental impact. That's the climate dividend. We co-created it with the UN, the United Nations Climate Change, the ADEME, who's the transition agency, governmental transition agency in France, and other kind of experts all around the world. And the idea is to say, our shareholders, today there are 70K only, come to have an environmental impact. And when they put money into Time for the Planet, it's for having this impact. So they have to drive the company regarding this indicator first. And the climate dividend is the quantity of greenhouse gases not emitted or captured thanks to their money working for them into Time for the Planet. So the companies we are creating are of course profitable, but the money is going back to launch new innovations. And what our shareholders are attending from the company and what they are regarding is the impact concrete, and what's the impact clearly of my money? And that's what I mean, the climate dividend. So the climate dividend is like one climate dividend equal 1 ton of greenhouse gases not emitted or captured. And that's pretty important because it changed many things. Like, for example, we are also putting all the companies into the open source business model. It means that we are creating free licensing. Anyone all around the world can use this free license to duplicate the business, duplicate the innovation, and create an activity with this. But you have to reshare, and that's something you must do when you own this license. You have to reshare your own impact with us, Time for the Planet, so that we can give it back to our shareholders. It means when we have some competitors all around the world with this free license, our shareholders are happy because they are what we give back to them at the end of the year growing. That's some things we have to change today, because today we are driving the plane with just one button, who's the money, but we need to have more buttons if we want to drive a plane correctly. And climate impact is one of them, biodiversity is one of them, etc.
So thank you very much. You've got tough competitions. There is champagne just in the next room, and the people are talking louder and louder. But just to summarize, because maybe it's quite complex to understand the innovations and the breakthrough that Time for the Planet has developed, it's called a climate dividend. Climate dividends, so far, they're not really well known, but we can expect that in a 5 to 10 years' time, most of the company will have to have a climate dividend. So I invite you to look at the work that they've done. It's an open share innovation. Not everyone is eligible to use climate dividend because it requires to really walk the talk and have a true impact in terms of CO2 emissions. But that's really something that I think, to my point of view, will shake up the business industry and the way we measure sustainable growth. So I really invite you to look at that. Another thing that struck me when we talked together, Arthur, is that within the innovation that you are currently financing through Time for the Planet, there are a couple of innovations that I hadn't heard about, and I'm a big geek. I look at any innovations that could be applicable to the luxury business to make it more sustainable, that are very interesting. There were 3 that we talk about because maybe it could give some idea to CEO of luxury group or luxury brands to implement them within their business. Can you share with us these 3 innovations that we talked about?
Yeah, with pleasure. We have talked about Leviathan Dynamics first, I remember. So Leviathan Dynamics
just one sec. Can we have the volume a bit up so that everyone can hear? Because I can see the faces of people being like, ah. Okay, great.
Okay. It's better like this or not? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's really better.
Okay.
And talk loudly like I do, because we've got the champagne competing against us.
Okay, yeah, champagne is a hard competitor, always. Okay, so we invested in several innovations today, but yeah, 3 of them could be interesting for the luxury industry. Like, for example, Leviathan Dynamics. It's about cooling systems. So each time you want to produce something with using cooling systems, you have to use some HFC gases. HFC gases are gases that are like really thousands of times worse than CO2 regarding climate change, and we don't know how to produce cold without these gases today. Leviathan Dynamics, they find a way to produce cold only with some couple of liters of water and using 30% electricity less than a normal cooling system product. So that's pretty powerful, because you can solve 2% of the climate crisis only regarding these HFC gases if you have a solution, and that's what Leviathan Dynamics is doing. So that's one of the innovations that could be interesting if you have to use some cooling systems in your business. We can talk also about...
So I just summarized to make sure that Leviathan Dynamics, if you've got retail point of sale, if you've got company premises, or if your supply chain has got a lot of cooling system, because I don't know, it's alloyers and it's a refinery, then this system enables you to have cooling system that doesn't emit methane, and methane is the gas that make the climate burn the fastest. They've got the biggest impact in the short term on the climate warming. So it's very interesting.
It's not methane, it's way more worse than methane. It's HFC gases, and it's thousands of times more than methane. And methane is, yes, one of the worst gas regarding climate change. So yeah, HFC gases, it's like the last level of dangerosity.
Thank you for correcting me. And there is a second innovation that is quite interesting. When you presented to me, I was like, haha, this is a joke, this is so easy. But at the same time, in fact, it's a true innovation. It's a simple way of implementing it, but it can change things. Can you talk to us about cool roof paintings?
Yeah, the idea is just to paint some roof in white, because it reflects the sunrise directly in the atmosphere, and it can pass the temperature of a roof from 70 degrees to something like 30 degrees. So inside the building or inside the factory, you can have a drop from less minus 10 degrees, minus 20 degrees. So you can just cut, for example, the air conditionings or things like that. And the idea is to use a paint without any petrochemical things, and that could have a really long-term life, so 20 years in the case of cool roof, because they use some shell to create this paint. So that's the innovation, and that's pretty powerful, even if it's just something pretty easy to do. But it could change a lot regarding the energy consumption into a factory or into a building.
And the latest project that is quite interesting, it's something that is happening with stone, volcanic stones. Can you give us some hints on that?
Yeah, we invest 2 million into something. Its name is Carbon Impact, and that's a rock, a volcanic rock you maybe heard about. It's a green volcanic rock, and when you put it in the water, but that's a normal process, already exists at a normal and a natural state, it produces like a chemical reaction that will capture some CO2 directly in the air, and it's way more powerful than planting trees. And what they have seen is that when they crunch this olivine rock into a sand and they put it into, like, for example, some beaches, the carbon capture is really huge. We can have like some billions of tons of carbon captured if it was on 2% of the beach of the world in this form. Of course, it's a theoretic thing, but it's just to say it's way more powerful than planting trees, and that's a natural process that we would like to go beyond with, because it's also something you can use for carbon capture and have some carbon credits that are complementary of climate dividend in our sector.
So maybe it's a bit technical, but most of the luxury groups or brands are doing the They are calculating their climate footprints, and they are doing two things. They are offsetting, compensating for the carbon that they emit, and they are insetting, reducing the carbon that they emit. So most of the time to offset, projects are based on planting trees, but now there are new solutions that are more powerful than planting trees, that are not competing against, but that can be complementary. So for all of the details of this innovation, if you are interested, you're not going to understand everything with this conference, but the idea was to give you a bit of hints of things that could be implementing in the luxury sectors. To conclude, I would like to invite both Irene and Arthur to share their view on what Reluxury stand for, on how it could make a difference in terms of impact on achieving best result for the Sustainable Development Goals.
Well, I'm looking forward to the outcomes of this first-time conference, of course, and to seeing what the different talks sort of drive us towards. But of course, the idea of is an important recovery strategy, let's say, of the circular economy. You mentioned that there's 5 or 3 R's, but mostly when we want to close the loop, as we say, making sure that the resources that we use are coming back into the economy, we want to, as a priority and a preference, reuse materials and products as much as possible. Then we have other options, which are less good, because of course they require more energy and transformation, and the materials might lose some of their properties. These are refurbishing or remanufacturing rather, and then recycling. So all the initiatives that are pushing for the higher value recovery strategy, which is reuse, are certainly welcome to the circular economy. Of course, they must be done always thinking in terms of what is the highest sustainability impact, and that's why it's very important that we get to talk about these issues today, so that we keep that in mind and we do not fall into perhaps working with a reuse system, but then using a lot of plastic packaging, for example, for it. And then we take into account all the different footprints and impacts that we might have and work with the sustainable packaging, for example, for all the different cycles of the reuse of a product. But perhaps we can talk about that more. I'm not sure what's on the plan. But certainly very excited about the initiative and looking forward to its results.
And maybe what you need to keep in mind is that if you want to manage your footprint, if you want to calculate it, you need to have indicators and you need to opt for measurements. And maybe Irene is one of the key experts in this area. She's leading a worldwide research on that. So I think that you've been publishing a book.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. We do have, we're publishing regularly many different protocols at WBCSD. One of these is a protocol to measure circularity. It's a circular transition indicators. It covers some of the pillars that I talked about before. How do you become more sustainable and circular as a company? By sourcing better, by designing your products better, but also by implementing those business models which are new, like reuse. Product as a service is also another one that ensure longer life for products across time. Of course, there's many other indicators, and I realize that this is not the space to get into the details, but do get in touch with me, and I'll be very happy to talk about our overarching work and research on circularity. Something else that we are also very excited to look at the moment is beyond becoming more circular. It's the impact that I would have on my sustainability objectives if I am more circular after all. And therefore, immediately a company can see if I shift from virgin gold to recycled gold, I would have huge gains in terms of my Scope 3 emissions in my sourcing. So also, this is quite nerdy, and I will not get into it, but very excited to tell you more about this after this conference, of course, and you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn as well.
So thank you so much, Irene, for your insight. Arthur, can you share with us as well your view on Reluxury, what it can be, what connection it can do with Time for the Planet?
Yeah. Okay. I think something is really important with the luxury world. I'm not an expert of the luxury world, but it drives the success code in our societies, and that's something we have to reimagine something we have to reinvent fully. So that's pretty important and powerful to change the way art is creating this kind of success code. I think that's maybe the most important thing to change if we want this transition to happen. So how we see the success, how we see the fact we have a good life, we are someone who's successful. It's pretty powerful to change the way we are consuming, the way we are living, the way we are extracting resources at the end. So that's pretty important if the luxury market is able to reinvent, to reimagine the way we are creating this success code. Because we need to have other kind of success code and other kind of imagination about this, all the topics of the success. And that's pretty connected to the luxe for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for this insight. And that's true that sometimes when you are a luxury brand, you wonder if using waste, would it be would have a counter image effect on your product. And what is very interesting, and we will see that this afternoon, is that consumers are seeing very positive the fact that we recraft out of virgin materials. And upcycling as well is a very exciting area. And there is a whole new economy of reparation, reselling that is booming. And I think that there are many things that can be done with authenticity, measuring the way we act so that the footprint that we leave is better. And one thing as well that we should have in mind is that luxury shapes the desire of consumer. Even if you don't buy luxury good, you might dream of luxury good. And this dreaming part of the luxury good is very important to work because luxury has an impact that can be really much bigger than just the market that it's standing for. It can shape new consumption pattern. It can shape new desire for new material. And in that sense, with the margin that the sector is doing, there is also a duty to invest in creating the new innovations that will enable us to live in a sustainable world. So I thank you so much for listening to us and staying with us, and we really appreciate your interest. Would you have any questions? We're happy to take it. We're going to be there, maybe you're going to be there for how many times?
Just the time to get a champagne.
Okay, so you can have a cup of champagne with Irene. Arthur, do you want to share your contact details in case somebody is interested to get in touch with you, or I don't know if you manage everything in person. I know that you are in vacation, so thank you so much for being there during your vacation. So anything to reach you?
Yeah, if you want to reach me directly on LinkedIn, it's, I think, the quite easy things to do.
Okay, thank you so much. And if you've got any questions, I don't know if there is any micro, but...
Yep. Grab a mic.
No questions or one questions? Maybe asking questions around a cup of champagne, a coupe de champagne, une coupe de champagne, I can't say it anymore, will be the best. So thank you so much, Irene. Thank you so much, Arthur. We were really pleased to have you for the first talk of the Reluxury events.
Thank you very much for your amazing insight and for all what you share with us. I mean, I've wrote a couple of things that we definitely should keep in mind. So thanks a lot for joining us. And we will have a break right now. And I invite you to come back for 1 p.m. for an amazing statement that Céline is doing on a circular.
I'm doing it with Deloitte, and Deloitte will share the results of their worldwide study on the analysis of client desire for vintage watch. And it's really amazing, and it's digging into consumer desire for circularity and sustainability within the watch market. So I really invite you to join us.
So please grab a cup of champagne and come back at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.